morning and afternoon to all of you who have joined us today. And thank you all for joining in today, considering this is the last workshop of 2022. The next workshop that we are going to have would be in the first week of January. And we wanted to make the last one a special one. That's why we have Aksharaa with us today. So every industry you have designed so far for has its own set of constraints and a series of do's and don'ts, right? SaaS is no different. SaaS application design has its own set of guidelines and standards. There are questions like, is the new detail making life more difficult for the user? Does it require to raise the price of your product? How the change it is going to have on the management and maintenance, right? So all these questions and hundreds of more need to be considered when you design something for SaaS, right? We have Akshara with us, and she's gonna lead us through all of this. She's a design evangelist and helps early stage startup realize their products. In the process, she teaches them how and why it is essential to become user-centric companies and incorporate the culture right from the beginning. Akshara, the stage is all yours. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. Everyone, hello. Thanks for attending, the workshop here, even though I know the holidays are right around. And, you've made on a Saturday evening. So just shows how much dedication you have to learn design, right? So thank you so much for, registering the workshop, right? So I will just briefly introduce myself on how I became interested in designing for SaaS products in the first place, right? I'm currently working as a design lead at Sourcewiz. So Sourcewiz is a SaaS platform dedicatedly made for manufacturers and exporters. So I have been one of the founding members and was working initially to come up with a platform that engages all these manufacturers right through the entire export cycle. Now we can imagine like how complex the entire process is going to be, and while creating a platform to to cater to their needs, I would say learned a lot of some new insights that I'm very excited to share with you going forward. Okay. So, as designers, we're always, I think, inspired and excited towards platforms and apps and, that have amazing UX experience with, mind-blowing UI, with motion designs of next level, I think. But, SaaS, for me, I gained newfound respect for SaaS platforms because these are those not so glamorous platforms, but they're silently running in the background, but are very essential to some of the major companies who are supporting, without which we could not imagine the world we see it right now. So I think this sessions hopefully will enlighten you in a bit, and saying that, also help you find interesting problems to solve it in that regions like I did. Right. So I think at the first instance, or first when we listen about what SaaS platforms are, they might sound complex, dull, and majorly remind you of work, because that's what SaaS platforms do, right? So they are made for the users to accomplish a task. So it's not something, people are not using it for catering to their day-to-day needs, but mostly because they have to achieve something at their day-to-day job. So solving for that and making sure, how do we ensure that whatever platform we're designing is making their job easier, but not difficult. So that's what we are going to cover in the future, in the coming slides. So I just want to make sure that, at the end of any slide, if you have any questions, do raise a hand or just drop it on the Q&A or chat so that we can take it up to discussion. Right? Cool. So first thing I would like to take you through is how the research is different, or like not different, but a little bit more advanced compared to the rest of the platforms or the generally B2C platforms that we look at for. I know the heading that might sound a little controversial. Engineers don't come at me with derivations, etc. But what I'm trying to highlight here is the research, how we actually do it is very important to understand that this is mainly towards increasing the efficiency of of the task at hand. So just doing it, explaining it in simpler terms, right? If I have to, I think like most of the designers, the SaaS tool that we are very used to seeing is Jira, maybe, or some other tools like Asana we might have used, right? So we're not doing it just because it helps us entertain or it helps us solve our day-to-day needs, but we are doing it because it helps us do our job better. And how efficiently I'm enabling as a designer for someone to do their job is what the research has to be very focused upon. So I think we all might have heard, right? For SaaS platforms, functionality is the first level, but like for this level of platforms, it's very important that we do solve for functionality. And understanding what the user's goals are, what the user tasks are, also like important here. And there are multiple methods that we can solve, that we can do it through, is either by contextual research. Contextual research meaning, what the environment people are working in, the environment or the devices they use, like the tiny detail does matter. What role they are playing in the organization, how many different levels of reporting, or like how the structure of the organization is built. So all of these factors greatly affect on how how a person works, who they report to, etc. And depending on what level of the product you're at, for example, taking the example of Sourcewiz, like where I initially started the research. So we had a very limited set of users because that's when we were researching the problems, and we were trying to understand like how exactly the manufacturing process works, and like what are the pain points at every stage that these users face. So we almost collaborated with our first set of users into finding, what is the best UX and what is the UI that clicks with them, right? So knowing that, I think how the users respond to your platform is also at the initial stages become crucial when, even before you scale up. And I think shadowing is also the best thing in the research that works really pretty well. So no matter we have like, there are multiple methods of research, focus groups, or all of this, but it's important that to notice that whenever you are working as a person, it's very hard to recollect all of those details, and like what a person does, what softwares they use when like others while they're accomplishing their day-to-day goals. So these might not come out very well just by direct interviews or only during focus sessions. So it's important that like we shadow them, try to understand how they approach each and every task in their day-to-day work life. So I think that is like one of the first things, or like at a higher level, like how the research kind of becomes important and paves the way of how your design process or like the feature design goes in the future as well. So I just want to quickly stop for any questions you might have at this point. Okay, cool. So there is another question. What exact research method we should start? That. So as I mentioned, it highly depends on what is the scale of the product and the company. So if you're initially at the starting stages, like I mentioned, you need to understand that you're just launching the product, right? So that is when you need to do a lot of qualitative analysis, qualitative research. And the three methods that I had mentioned, right? Contextual research, collaboration, and shadowing are, I would say, like, would be the ones which will give you the maximum amount of insights. So we can dive deep into what contextual research is, and also like what shadowing is, right? So shadow is, you might have heard, like being a fly on the wall and observing exactly what what users are doing throughout the day, right? So documenting all of those and drawing insights from them is, is one of the great way to understand what pain points your user going through on a day-to-day basis. Abhijit, I hope I answered your question. Got it. So there is one other thing I would like to also discuss here is, like what I meant when I said like 1 + 1 = 2, no matter who solves it, right? So it's important to understand that, what areas to research in, not being bogged about, like it can be very confusing to users, to designers, that, you have to understand everything about your users. So when you are defining a user persona, you always might have think, okay, I have to understand, what they are doing in a day, but also like what might their interests be like, what their music taste or anything else that you might use to define the persona is not going to affect that much, so as to say, because any task has a definite process that needs to be followed. So it doesn't matter if it's me or if it's you or if it's any other person who we're taking into context, but they would have to, follow the same procedure. So it's important that you define the areas of research and highly focus on the functionality, as I mentioned, and think about, like how these users how to accomplish a particular task, and just make sure that you understand everything about it, right? So it's not just about, let's take an example of someone who is, who has to create a document day in and day out, right? So that's their job. But you have to think about, what are the necessary material that they're collecting, where they're collecting from to create that document, and who is that document being forwarded to, what is the end goal of it. So if you try to understand the nuances of it, I think that would help you greatly into creating a UX and the UI that is very specific to, to that particular problem statement. And for a person, it wouldn't seem like they're learning something entirely new, right? Got it. Okay. Cool. So when coming to the interface, as I mentioned, why interface is or plays a very major role in, and I would say like in the adoption of the product, right? So over the years, I think there has been a huge difference in how design has been approached towards SaaS platforms, right? So if you remember how SaaS platforms used to be earlier, they used to be very cluttery, and it was very, I would say, like had a steep learning curve and not very delightful. So but the approach has changed over, and I think being a designer, it's very important that you understand why the approach has changed, right? So so when I say like the first line means is the ideal interface would be habit inducing and rewarding. So picking up from my own experience, like these users we are talking to at Sourcewiz, so they are technically not that, I would say, like advanced. They wouldn't understand. They come from tier 2 cities. So imagine designing a SaaS platform for a person who is in a tier 2 cities with not much of an educational background and not not very tech savvy and hasn't been using like very advanced platforms in general. Right. So when you say the ideal interface would be habit inducing and rewarding, it means that initially the person would have some learning curve, say, but eventually like it would become a habit for them. So I would say like on the interface, the user should be able to, like without thinking, should be able to say, should be able to perform actions that, like, because they are going to use the platform day in and day out for multiple times. So it should not, the interface should not be puzzling to that user, saying that, like, okay, every time I look at a new screen, it shouldn't be that as a user, I have to read or understand what is going to happen, or what is happening, what's the next step going to be, etc. Right? So creating and inculcating a habit inducing platforms in the entire UI is going to help a user just to perform actions in a way without having that cognitive load about thinking like thinking about each and every step, right? And being rewarding is like once they accomplish a task, you have to be like the interface should be having some level of delight. I think that's where we would be in, like that's where we would see like the platform is rewarding you for accomplishing a task, right? So you must have seen in Asana or somewhere when you complete a particular sprint, you see a unicorn flying through your screen. So that is I would say like that's the vision of the SaaS platform that we're moving towards, I think, but which was not seen earlier much. And yeah, so as we had earlier mentioned that, like this is strictly speaking from a user's perspective, but SaaS platforms also have a lot of implications when it comes to business, right? So you have high-paying clients, you might have business needs. So why the interface plays a major role in that is because it also reduces the learning time. So if let's say if you create some interface that is got it. So I'll just come to that, Abhinav. So when we say that they have to be, like the time spent figuring out the platform is very important to not just you as a business, but also for your client, right? So if they see that your platform is cost effective, it doesn't take a lot of time for their employees to learn. So they would see it as a plus point. They would prefer more. That's also where your UI comes into picture. So taking question from Abhinav, talking about learnability of the interface of SaaS product, what can be some tips to lessen the curve? Right. So Abhinav, I think the first thing we need to admit is that, SaaS products do have a learning curve, right? It's not as if someone would understand. Or, I mean, as a designers, we would definitely like to try and reduce that gap in understanding. But since the processes themselves might be complex and the steps might be really long, so I would implore you to say that, like, accept the fact that a little and try to make that learning curve a little bit more simpler and enjoyable in learning. So, speaking about some of the tips, I would say, like the basic laws of following the basic laws of heuristics at every screen is very, I would say, is important. It's the first basic step that would make you stand out. And the second thing would be not making the user think. How do you not make the user think? So I think at every point of time, we keep thinking about how to reduce the number of steps, how to make sure that the user reaches their goal faster. But I would say like that's not the main point, but it can be smaller steps. But at every step, we need to make sure that the user understands and doesn't face difficulties into thinking what just to decode your platform first, right? So I think making sure that at every step we have a very clear goal about a single step rather than having the user make multiple steps in the same screen, right? So that is one of the things that you need to remember. So Abhinav, just following up on your question, right? So lessen the learning curve is, are you specifically talking about the UI, or are we talking about the overall platform or in a particular feature? Right. So there is always like incremental learning. Got it. So there is always an incremental learning, right? So like as much as your product evolves, right, you might have to introduce more and more features, and a lot of things. It might be really tough for someone to just learn it in a single go. So what we do is like we do take the help of offline CSM trainings, etc., but intelligently making sure that we have the learning guides on the platform itself wherever necessary, is without bombarding the user with a lot of material in the first go, right? So I think cleverly understanding the context of the real life steps that the user is going to take. For example, just taking the example of Sourcewiz as a platform, right? So being an exporter, let's say they have to create a document called, they have to generate an invoice, right? So we know that trying to, like, from the research that we have conducted, that invoices are generated, during let's say the end of the month. So we have to be clever about when we're introducing the guidelines to the user, saying that, okay, like, the insight from the research is now being used being fed into the platform, saying that, okay, by the end of the month, the user might start seeing more tips and tools on, like how to generate invoices, etc. So to answer your question, Abhinav, so like not cluttering the user with knowledge. It's important to make your platform, the design of the platform, smart enough to understand when the user or anticipating the needs of the user, basically saying when exactly they would be needing which feature and at what point they might be executing a particular task. And this comes again from contextual research and shadowing and like performing a thorough research, right? So I hope that answered your question. Great. Okay. So just speaking at a very high level, like trying to understand like how you have ensured that your platform, like the SaaS platform that you've designed is very useful. I would say the first sight of it is like the users would stop complaining. We definitely have heard the statement, right? The good designs become invisible. I think this applies here a lot, because the more and more integrated your platform becomes into their day-to-day lives, it becomes a way of work rather than them using a platform separately. So it just gels into their day-to-day lives, day-to-day work life. So I think that is the highest I would say, like achievement or like a success metric that we can define for a SaaS platform specifically, right? And the other metrics to obviously look out for is the time to learn, as we discussed previously, and time to value. So how time to learn and time to value are different is when a user like successfully learns how to perform a task on your platform, right? How much time does it take for them? That directly reflects the efficiency of your platform. But a time to value comes only through repetitive usage, saying that, okay, like I as a user have been using Asana for a long time, and now that helps me organize my projects much faster or like in a much more efficient way. So that is the major difference between time to learn and time to value. So I personally like to see that, like for any platform, the time to value is something that usually might get mixed into your general metrics, but I would say like that would be one of the very most important metric to me. So and it usually happens that specifically for SaaS, with SaaS clients, it might be the kind of relationship that you might have built. But, once they trust your platform and once they see that they have actually been able to improve their overall efficiency, not just for a user level, but at an org level, they keep coming back to you with more feature requests and saying that, okay, like this is also a problem statement that we need to solve for, so can you help us with it? So that the kind of trust and, like, I think that gets established. What are the major challenges when designed for a SaaS platform? How does it differ from a non-SaaS platform? Got it. So Soham, to answer your question, I would say the major challenges to design is, I would say like establishing a very good research with with the users is one, can be a little challenging because I would say like the amount of time it takes to understand complex workflows can be daunting in the beginning because compared to, let's say, a non-SaaS platform like a B2C platform, it's not as it's not in just a few steps, like for even more complex problems, and that the entire process goes in a lot of data management, analytics, and document creation, or like multi-step platform, multi-step processes, right? So just ensuring that a user or someone who has who just interacting with your platform for the first time, so making sure that how that real work is being translated onto a digital world with, I would say, with very less friction, right, is very, I would say, like, is another challenge that keeps coming up. So I think like talking about Sourcewiz, we have actually tried to manage to translate the actual manufacturing process, and something that has never been done before to the platforms, in India especially. So I think it was quite challenging because it took a lot of time for the users to make them realize that it could be done in the first place. And it also involved making them learn a lot of new patterns and a lot of new steps, which they might not have seen anywhere else, right? So it's very specific to that field, and it's not general knowledge like, let's say, WhatsApp everyone uses, or like a food delivery app everyone uses, and we kind of know the expected steps, right? So we have that mental model of, like, okay, if I have to shop for something, I will explore, and then I will add to cart, and then I'll check out, right? But there are no standard patterns like that when it comes to SaaS platforms. And I think decoding them and ensuring that the difference between the real world processes and the experience and the UX on the platform sort of merges, I think is I would say like is also one of the, like major challenges that we do face as designers. I hope I answered that question for you. Those challenges is applicable to non-SaaS products also. Which challenges? I mean, the specific challenges that I had mentioned. Okay. Okay. I would just take a deeper example then, of what a case study, so as to say, at Sourcewiz. So imagine like someone who has to create a catalog. Like you might have known what exactly a catalog is. So it's like a presentation of the products. So an exporter and manufacturer of home and lifestyle products have to create catalogs to send it to their buyers, right? Importers from multiple countries, etc. So when I had said like we have to make these users learn new patterns, what I understand is like what I meant is they have never used a specific software to create these catalogs, right? And if I say that the first step they have to do is like product information management, that's a new term for them, right? Specifically for these set of users that we're talking, who are coming from tier 2 cities. So they have never heard about such problems. And the process itself on how to maintain a PIM, basically a product information management system, is a bit complex, that there are bulk upload processes, that there are data management processes. And imagine like someone who has just been using a PowerPoint presentation their entire life to create these catalogs, suddenly has to learn an entire set of like a tool to create a catalog, and in the end result is for them to make it realize that, okay, like whatever time you have been spending, like from 4 to 5 days to create a catalog, can now be done in 10 minutes. But then the learning curve was for them to learn the PIM management tool, right? So now the entire process of like just to removing the friction, right, and to make them understand, to unlearn and make them relearn in separate, like in different completely different new platform, is, I would say, has its own kind of challenges. And it might be might be a lot of time taking for them to understand in the first place. So I think that I would say, like, that being said, how we have enabled that translation to make sure that whatever the interface that we have designed has been very similar to what other tools they have been using. And it didn't really have to, I would say, like, didn't have to have the ideal UX, didn't have to have the, the best kind of UI, but I think taking that as an input, that, we have to reduce the gap between the learning, is it took a lot of research and a lot of experiments to be done. So because of which now the implementation time has gotten a lot lesser, right? So that is, like, that's what I meant by, ensuring that the translation from a physical world to digital world, the processes at least have to, have to be very seamless. I think those, that is one of the, I'd say, like, challenge here with SaaS products. Cool. Right. So I think overall, I have to mention, one thing that, circling around time to value, the point of time to value. So, like I had mentioned, when we say that we have ensured, once we have ensured that, the interface that we're talking about, or like has been very seamless for these users, but you always definitely would face some sort of backlash saying that, like the users might go to their own way saying, okay, this is the best way. What I have been doing is the best way to do a platform. Like, yes, the interface that you have created might be great, but because since they have been used to it, it's very hard for people to quickly turn to a new platform, right? So how do we ensure that the time to value is like lessens lessens up a lot more, so the users can quickly convert, and I would say that eventually is what beneficial to to you as a business, right? So that is I think like conducting workshops has been one of the ways to do it initially. That it might not be directly related to UX as a designer, but yeah, I think that would really ensure. Well, I think that's mostly it. I know like we have had a very basic level of discussion. I just want to encourage more questions so that we can take this discussion to a deeper level.
Cool. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much, Aksha. I think it was a very insightful session, and the way you were helping the attendees with the detailed explanation was like really appreciated. So, guys, I think we have around 15-20 minutes more with us. You can
Mhm.
pop in your questions in the Q&A session, and we'll take it from there.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm happy to take more questions.
Yeah. I think there were two, three questions in the chat section. One was, can you please recommend books for designing SaaS products?
Oh, okay. I haven't. I think like for me personally, I learned majorly on the job. So I'm the kind of person who has, like been working with a lot of SaaS products, right? Even when I was working in Dubai as a product designer. So all of these two tools that are marked as internal. So we had a property management tool which helped, like real estate agencies to list their properties. So a lot of these, I think, came from experience only. But if I'm not sure, like if I have any books on mind right now that would help you specifically for SaaS design.
But as in, what's your favorite book when it comes to design as a genre? Like,
So I think the recent one I am reading is Reimagining Design. I think that is, I would say like I haven't finished it, but that's my favorite right now.
okay, we have. Uh, okay, first one, ma'am, what exact research method we shall? No, no.
I think there's a new open question like I'm working
US
with based real estate
real
company.
estate product company.
Okay, Abhijit. So
Okay.
what's your question?
I think he was just informing in response to your mentioning that you're
Oh, okay.
working.
Got it. Cool.
Pop in your questions, people. Okay.
So I'm just asking like what exactly is the product about, or do you have a question specific to the platform that you're creating?
Oh, I think
Oh,
he's just informing.
got it.
Home inspectors.
Got it.
So meanwhile, they put in questions. I'll just. Okay. So he's asking, how can you guide me for that? How
Uh,
do you do it?
Guide you for
Can you guide me?
Okay. Guide me for creating a real estate product for home inspectors.
So he said earlier that he's currently designing a SaaS product for home inspectors and termite inspectors.
Okay. So okay. Okay, I see that, like your product has a lot of roles and, specific dashboard and source products and designing. So it got it. So I think one thing it's a very, like something that I've recently discovered is, while designing, we always try to get, like get into the details of how, for example, like how a settlement agent's user journey might look like, or a buyer agent's user journey might look like. But we often forget like how the dynamics between these two or multiple roles in an organization work. Right. So if I have to, let's say there is the admin of the company or like who is the owner of the company, and we might see them as roles or like just roles on the platform, but having that contextual research saying that what is, like what kind of pressure or like what kind of say does an admin have over an employee, right? Like say really helps into understanding, okay, how fastly can I help this employee complete their task so their admin doesn't get mad at them, or like trying to understand the dynamics or why a buyer agent, how and why a buyer agent is dependent on a seller agent or a listing agent, for example. So not just the individual user journeys, but also at an org level, if you understand what are the dependencies and intricacies between each roles, would definitely help you design a better platform, right? So dashboards might, I think creating dashboards, we need to understand like the core use of dashboards on the what is the important information that any particular like a buyer agent would need at any point of time. We might see a lot of fancy dashboards with a lot of analytics, with a lot of graphs, but it's important that do we even need them at the first place? Do a buyer agent, so just don't get inspired. I mean, don't put dashboards or make them fancy just for the sake of it, right? So you definitely need to understand at any given point of time, like what information does a particular, like a buyer agent or a seller agent would need.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, so cool. So Purti, how was your design journey has been like so far? Like how did you started? Like you always knew that you wanted to be a designer, or how did it all start?
Actually, I was an engineer too, initially. Like I was studying electrical engineering in IT Guwahati. But when I was in my fourth year, I just realized, I have always been a creative person too. So I've been in the search of one particular field that could actually fit myself as like my skill set. And we had a design department in IT Guwahati back then. So that's how I got to know that, there exists a field. It was way back in 2016, feels like years ago. So yeah, that's how I got to know, and then broke into design, like started building my portfolio, and like started with an internship at Make My Trip. That was like my first job, and then I have worked with multiple startups, a cybersecurity firm, like a social media platform, a finance platform. So a lot of startups. And then I moved to Dubai, worked there as a product designer for a couple of years. And that's where I came, came across this Sourcewiz as, like as the design lead. Then I moved back to India as a design lead and have been here another couple of years now. So yeah, I think that's how my learning journey has been. And I think I believe I'm still learning as a design manager. So yeah.
I think that's great. Figuring out that particular career that fits all your what you want to be, what your soul actually wants to be. I think that's the most important thing. Cool. Okay, we have a question. Uh, Please suggest some online resources which help us to learn more about SaaS from a basic level to higher level.
Actually, before I was actually kind of surprised that we don't have dedicated resources or, specifically for SaaS platforms. I was quite surprised myself. I was initially when I was searching for, what exactly the design process is for SaaS platforms, right? So I'm just quite surprised by the limited resources. Maybe I think you should do a course specifically on SaaS platform, and
Thank
that
you
will help a
so
lot
much.
of people.
Thank you so much. I would say we were already in the process of doing it. So in the next three course launch, we are thinking of building one, and
Got
I
it.
think
So,
it
Jitin,
already got a validation from you that it is necessary.
right. So, Jitin, I think the next you can look forward to the course on ProApp.
Hmm. Um, I think we do not have any further questions. Uh, I've just pasted your LinkedIn profile URL in the chat section. So if people have any issues, they can reach out to you via LinkedIn.
Got it. So I understand, SaaS generally might not be the also glamorous, I would say, the exciting field in
Right,
design, specifically for designers, when design is going through a lot of, I would say, like a lot of facets are opening up with new
right.
developments, with AI, VR, Web3, a lot of things, right? So yeah, but I think for SaaS platforms, they do deserve their own kind of I'd say
Right.
respect.
I
Yeah.
think they're there to make your life simpler. So, as in we as an organization, we used to use Zoho. So
Hmm.
Zoho, if I talk about as an engineered platform, is a very good platform. But when it comes to design,
Right.
uh, all their products are broken. Like there's not a consistent design system which is being followed across the different products or services they offer. But
Right.
as a product, it is still fabulous and coming this from like it's I think the most popular product from India itself, and it's so well engineered. But design is that one element I think, which is something it's not able to take it to the place where it should be. So in terms of usability, but they have tried to cover it up with, they've built such great knowledge base. There are so many courses, learning resources which they have created for the users, for the customers, so that they're trying to solve it by that. So I think SaaS holds its own place because it's kind of make your professional life so simpler. You can
Yeah.
manage products, you can manage the HRMS, the lead manager, the application tracking systems, all of the SaaS products. I
Yeah.
think you cannot run a company without them.
I think even for B2C companies, all these SaaS products are generally just marked as internal tools. But
Right,
fail
right,
to understand, like without those, it's hard to even support what you're doing at a
right,
customer level, right? So
right,
I would just as I said, they're just in the background, making
right,
sure everything is working. And
right.
yeah,
Awesome. I think we can call it a wrap since we do not have any further questions. So
right.
thank you so much, Aksharaa, for taking out time and doing this with us. Thanks a lot and have a great, great weekend.
You too. Have a
Okay.
bye
Bye
bye.
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 Take care. There are many thank you that are coming in the chat section as of now.
Thanks everyone. Also, thanks for attending and hope you keep learning.
Yeah.
Right. Have a good
Cool.
evening. Bye.
You too. Bye bye.